Hello, I am Xanthix. This is a tutorial on how to use a combination of tools developed by Volatile Pulse, Coldino, and myself to quickly generate complex weighted sum searches using the official Path of Exile trade site. A weighted search is a method for comparing several possible mods given relative values. You can then shift through items using the sum of the weights to have a better idea of how items might compare to each other, even though they have completely different mods. We'll be using weighted mods to determine relative changes in DPS. So the first thing that you want to do is make sure that you're using the zip version of Path of Building, which can be got at this release page here. You might to make sure that you're using the zip version, as it has several additional files that are required by the tool written by Volatile Pulse and Coldino in order to work. So after you have unzipped Path of Building, you'll be given a folder that looks something like this, and then you'll want to run Path of Building. For this exercise, I'm going to create a new build, and I'm going to import one of my own characters. And I'm going to set it up as Molten Strike with the magma balls, and then I'm going to save my build. And there we are. So if we go back and check the Path of Building directory, there is now a builds directory. We could have created that folder ourselves and copied over any existing builds, but for the purposes of this example, I imported my own character. We then want to go to our configuration setting and make sure that all the values are set correctly. So this character is Chaos Inoculation. So the things that I want to set are always on full life, and then I don't generate any charges, I don't have Fortify, I have a Flask active, I've crit recently, none of these other things really matter, the enemy is blinded because of existing Abyss Jewels, and that all looks good. I am also going to set all of my flasks as active. The last thing I'm going to do is I'm going to actually unsocket one of my existing jewels so that we can see something later in this example. So everything's set up the way that I would like. I'm going to now save this build again, and I'm going to leave Path of Building running. So the next thing we want to do is go and get the Path of Building item tester tool. This tool has several features available to it that are described in the README. However, for this example, we're only going to focus on two of them. So you're going to want to either clone or download this project, depending on if you're familiar with Git. And once you've downloaded, you should see a directory that is very similar to this. So we will then run the test item.ahk. If Path of Building is still running, it will detect that it is running, and be able to find Path of Building's install directory and pull up any builds that may have been created in there. We also have additional settings where we can set this tool to always use the last build that was open in Path of Building, or to update the build before continuing. So I'm just going to go with perma-immune and hit OK. And we're completed. We're done. So we have a couple of options from this point. We can either press Control, Windows, Alt plus D, and it'll open that dialog again where we can select a specific build, and then it will generate the weighted sum search. Or we can do Control, Windows, D, and it will generate a search based on our existing settings. So this tool has generated a bunch of weights based on these various mods, based on the build that I have saved in Path of Building. These instructions are also available at the top of this page in a compact text form, as well as additional alternate instructions that would be copying jewels into Path of Building by hand, and then manually copying all the values over. However, that's much more label intensive, whereas this tool, once you understand what's going on, is very quick. So in addition to setting all these various weights, Path of Building has a bunch of flags associated with skills, and the auto hotkey tool is able to pass those along as well. So we're using a perma-immune build, and we're using the skill Molten Strike and the magma balls portion of Molten Strike. So that set it as an attack in melee, area, projectile, elemental, and fire. Because this is Molten Strike, I don't actually care about scaling the melee portion, so I'm going to uncheck melee and leave the rest of the items checked. Everything else looks correct. We've hit recently, crit recently, etc. So we then want to generate our query. So this will open a search link that we can then click, and it will open the official trade site with a search. This may take more than one try to get it to open. I've never had it take more than two. And also this sum may not always show up, so you may need to refresh in order to get the sum to show up, and then sort, and then unsort in order to see the items available. So right now we see that we're showing 100 results out of 2,112 matched items. That's a lot of items. So I'm going to want to actually go to my filters and change this weight to a higher value, but I don't know what to change it to yet. And you'll also notice that this has several mods in here, especially ones that don't even show up on jewels, such as increased damage per 15 int, because this supports searching in many different item slots, such as wands, rings, amulets, and shields. So I'm going to want to search or sort my current weights, and I see that at least within these 100, it can go up to 23,000. So I'm going to try to initially set this to about 15,000. With this search, I have 69 results, which is fewer than 100, so everything is being shown. And it looks actually like I have some pretty good results in here. So if I take one of these items, I can check and see how it would actually fit into my build. Because earlier I made sure that I had an empty jewel socket, I can copy the item to my clipboard and then do Control, Windows, C, and the AutoHotkey tool will open up this item tester as if you were attempting to add the item to path of building. So here we see that my tool gave the weight, it's about 22,999.8, and actually adding the item to my build is about 22,993. So there's a slight difference. And if we go over to path of building and we were to create a custom item with that jewel that we had before, we would see that the values are the same. So these values are slightly different because stats do not scale in a linear fashion. There is some slight multiplicative relationship between some of the values. If you take, for example, critical strike and critical multiplier, as you gain more critical strike, in general, a single point of crit multi becomes more and more valuable. However, if you have an item that has, say, 100% chance to crit on it and 30% crit multi, that's different than 30 times the one value of crit multi versus the 30% crit multi. So hopefully this gives you an idea of what this tool can do. As I said earlier, we can search any supported item slot. In this case, let's go with a ring and lower the weight maybe to 8,000. And we'll see that we can see these various items as how they weigh. This tool is designed for finding DPS boost among items that are random in their stat nature, which is all rare items and uniques that act like rares, such as Precursor's Emblem. While this tool will work for weapons used by casters and stat sticks used by casters in melee, it will not work correctly for weapons that you attack with and does not consider several mods that only appear on attack-based weapons. Hopefully that was helpful. If you have any additional questions, please add them to my Reddit post. And the last troubleshooting thing that I would want to cover is sometimes this search can generate a query that is too long for the trade site to handle, and you'll see a 414 request URI too long. If that happens, there's a field at the bottom of the page that has the query already generated, and there is a Python script for bypassing that request URI error. that uses a post method that can't be done via the web page due to the way the infrastructure is set up. If that does happen, please send me a message on Reddit or on GitHub with the paste bin of your build so that I can recreate it and try to make that error not happen again. Thank you.